So let me invite some of the politicians to the stage for the politics panel. We have Mehmet Kaplan, Swedish Minister of Housing and Urban Development. Please. And we have Kristoffer Tamsons, who is head of transportation at the Stockholm County Council. We have Mogert, Vice Mayor on Urban Planning, Stockholm City. Ingela Lindh. No, who is not a politician, but your title is like Vice President of Stockholm City. Is that something like that? Are you excited?
I'm blinded by this.
So, most welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. We are so happy to have you here. I would just like a quick yes and no, as for the other panel. Just say, are you surprised of the outcome of this research project? Ingela, are you surprised?
Given the group that made it, no.
And I agree with Ingela.
Okay.
Totally agree.
No. No. So, thank you.
We're done? Okay. Thank you very much.
Could you just make just a short, brief, spontaneous comment on what you have been seeing, what Noah presented, our research project, the scenarios, any just spontaneous reaction? Roger?
Well, I just arrived from another panel, so that would be kind of tricky, actually. Sorry about that.
What do you mean?
I didn't see the
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. But they were published in Dagens Nyheter some weeks ago as well. If you, yeah. Mehmet, any spontaneous, no?
Yeah, it was Dr. Noah Refford was very interesting in the beginning because it was mainly due to what has happened the last decades in Sweden was actually briefly passed by here on the screen, and then but in the end I was a little bit troubled that he didn't think, or maybe I misunderstood him, that it's the need of courage is not so evident amongst politicians, that the politicians do what the people want. And especially when we become about the discussion was about the congestion charts, we know that, especially Roger and me, that the politicians didn't do what the people want first. They actually, due to an agreement between the Social Democrat Party, my party, Green Party, and the Left Party, actually decided to have a full-scale test, so the people can see what the different alternatives was. And if the politician then didn't have the courage to actually take that decision and show the people what can be the alternatives, then we wouldn't have a congestion charge today, which even the moderate, the Conservative Party actually wants today. So it needs a lot of courage. Probably Noah said that, but my English is not good enough to understand.
So Kristoffer, from the Conservative Party, right?
Sorry.
What is your reactions to the scenarios? And
I would say it's a very interesting look upon scenarios, especially when it comes to what urbanization will mean for Sweden, and especially the Stockholm region. Because looking upon urbanization, we know that what other countries in Europe went through a few decades ago is actually going on in Sweden today. We are one of the most fastest urbanized areas or regions in Europe today. And of course, this means great challenges when it comes to how we are actually building our cities, how we are living our lives. And especially from my point of view, I would say it's also comes with these challenges comes great challenges when it comes to how we develop our traffic system, and especially I would say public transport is a very important part of actually making what I think we all want, making possibilities for Stockholm to grow, to urbanize, and to develop in what I would hope to see is a combination of a free techno city with an eco-friendly and environmentally friendly touch in the end, in some way.
Okay, so Ingela, what do you think?
I think definitely that courage is needed among the politicians. For instance, you talk a lot about density, that cities must become more dense, and that means that we will have to build in areas close to the city, able to make people able to walk or take the bicycles. And if we want to build a more dense city, it means that we will have to take away green areas. We have to change the whole outline of the inner suburban areas. And we just had a recent non-decisions considering one of these parts in Stockholm, and it created a lot of fuss. And because there is a problem. Because if you want a dense city, then you will have to build in areas where people live today. And if you create an urban sprawl, you have no conflicts, there's no neighbors who can complain, there's nobody who is unhappy, and only the environment. But if you actually want to make the city more dense, you have a lot of conflicts, and therefore you will have to have very brave politicians.
So... here's your boss,
so we're pretty much fucked.
What if you could just briefly describe what is your urban and transportation politics, just in a brief way? Are you thinking of changing it, for example, or what do you think of the future?
I would say it is changing. This is a moment of change in urban planning and in city history, because since the 40s, 50s, the main planning goal has been for motorized traffic, and that's changing. We might discuss whether it's changing rapidly or rapidly enough, but it's definitely changing.
And is that a good thing, do you think?
Yes, of course. It's changing to go more social and more green city. So it's a positive in many ways. It gives us access to new public spaces. It gives us a better climate in the end. So it's in many ways a positive change.
So, Mehmet, how does what does your politics look like for the future?
I totally agree with Roger in this manner. You know that we have a new majority in the city of Stockholm, a red, green, pink majority. And it is both encouraging the dense city, but also stresses the importance of green areas, because this is actually, as Kristoffer also said, that this is a combination. From the government's point of view, we are addressing both the challenges, and very briefly we are planning several different new investment grants, which is very important for those who are without homes, because we have new generation, which is, for instance, in London, they are calling the generation rent, where the young people doesn't live within the city of London except of 50 kilometers radius. So we don't want that to happen in Swedish cities also. And of course, London is much, much bigger. But if you look upon how big Stockholm is growing and how fast it is going, then we need a lot of investments to homes for young people and students. We also have what you call stadsmiljöavtal, which is a special grant for local authorities in order to further promote sustainable infrastructure and sustainable growth. And this is something which many of the municipalities, we have 290 of them, are welcoming, because they think that this is the way of making cities more dense and more reliable on what urban planners are expressing as motoring no longer favors growth, especially not sustainable growth. Rather, they are doing the opposite. So to leave, and what we saw here, to leave the cars and to walk, to take the bike and to take public transport is the way towards the future. And Sweden can be an example of how this can be done, even if we are quite not as dense populated as many other countries on the continent. So I believe that approach where we have sustainable infrastructure within every decision made, then we will take big steps towards this future.
Yes. Okay, so Kristoffer, how does your politics look like?
Well, let me first say that I think we are at the beginning of a very fantastic journey when it comes to how our main or major cities such as Stockholm works. Because when I grew up, you talked about public transport as something that you had for people that was too poor, too sick, or too weak to drive a car. And today we see that public transportation is much of what the idea of a major city actually circles around. And I think that is a tremendous journey that we have only begun. And of course, talking about a growing city as Stockholm, 35,000-40,000 new inhabitants each year, that means that we are going to need to do big investments when it comes to our infrastructure, and especially, I would say, the public transportation system. And I have 3 points that I think is necessary to have with me in that work. One is, of course, I would say to keep in good condition what you already have, because that is something that I think politicians need to address, that not only build new things and have brilliant new ideas, but also have an idea about how to take good care of what you have. The public transportation system that already exists, that people are using today to get to work and to have their life functioning in a good way. Which means, of course, that we need to do reinvestments when it comes to punctuality and safety and quality and so on in existing public transportation. Then I think another point is, of course, that we need to join forces in order to build new public transportation. And that is not a natural law that we are expanding or building new subway that we are right now in the Stockholm region. That is actually the result of politicians that has been brave and that has funded the biggest investment in expanding the metro system in 40 years. 9 new stations, 19 kilometers of new subway, 78,000 new homes as a result of that kind of agreement. And I think that is what we need to see more about in the future as well. But we need to join forces in order to make that kind of investments possible.
Are you coming to your last point now?
Yes, my last point is, of course, that we need to take a more active part in shaping and developing society, which of course means that we both need to connect investments in public transportation with new homes and new workplaces, but we also need to encourage new ideas and innovations. Just to mention one example that we are doing right now in Stockholm is that we are trying out as one of 2 cities, the first 2 cities in Europe, electric buses in city traffic. And I think we need to do more of that as well, to test new ideas, test new technology, to be in the forefront when it comes to that. And in the end of the day, it all boils down to Bill Clinton, you know, it's the economy stupid. We need to actually keep the finances in order to actually be able to fund all the good ideas and all that we need to do when it comes to investments.
I think the theme of this conference is very much that we seem to be quite an agreement on policy side, but what is actually happening in reality. What are we planning for? Where are we putting our money? So I think, Ingela, you were responsible for the city plan of Stockholm when you formerly was director of the urban planning administration. The title of it is The Walkable City. It's a very strong title. You can sell Stockholm internationally with that title. What is actually the Stockholm city doing to make Stockholm more walkable? What are you doing in practice?
I think we are, as Dan talked about, we have this framkomlighetsstrategi, which is a very good policy, and as Dan said, is actually, coming to become real. But it takes some time because it needs investment. But what the city is doing is put money aside so that we will be able to build more bicycle roads. We are, together with the County of Stockholm, have this agreement about more metro station, and we are actually financing these from the city, which is a new thing in Sweden, because usually the county should be responsible for this, and the
or the government.
Or the government, yes, of course, the government. But we have this combination of finance from the city, from the government, and from the county, and that is a very great thing that is happening at the moment. And we also try to make it a combination of these transport planning and the city planning, the urban planning. But it's not easy. For instance, in an area of Stockholm, in the southern part, we will have to build 45,000 new flats, which means 25 to 30% more housing in this area. And of course, this will totally change this area. And of course, that will mean conflicts and a lot of discussions. And therefore, we also try to involve all the citizens in these areas and also to promise that we will not only build new houses, we will increase the quality of the urban space. So we are doing a lot of things, and I'm quite sad when I hear you say that you have nice policies, but you actually doesn't do anything in real life, and it makes me really sad when you say that.
I'm sorry.
And yes, and I can maybe I can understand some of the things you say, but I also think that, as Dan said, we are standing on the shoulders of giants. We have done so much in the city in the past, and we are still doing it. And I'm quite proud of what we are doing at the moment.
I mean, you were emphasizing from the beginning that it's not an easy task to do all this densification that you are planning, that you want to do. Now I want to ask Roger, what do you say to the citizens when you face this densification that what we think is needed? What do you say to them when they say, well, you come with new housing, but we will have less green, more traffic, less parking space? What do you say to them?
Most of things like, oh, look, a bird. No, really, that's an excellent question, because I don't think most Stockholmers actually understand if I may use Barack Obama instead of Bill Clinton, the level of change. I mean, this is a defining moment in Stockholm. We're planning for 40,000 new housing units in 6 years. That's a 10% increase of the city. If we go out to 2030, that's a 30% increase, adding 140,000 new housings. So Stockholm is going to change, and it's going to change brutally, if you want. And that is a challenge. So we need to have a good dialogue. We need to have new forms of dialogue with the people we meet, because we're going to take away things from them. We're going to take away green areas. We're going to take away parts of their actual living room. So what we need to do, we need to have a good dialogue, but we also need to give them something back and make them understand. Not always love what we do, but we've got to make them understand what we are doing and what is happening. So when you say, how are you changing for this walkable city? We're going to build so much so the city will change. And it gives not only challenges, it gives an excellent opportunity to fix old mistakes, to mend old wounds, to make the city more alive, to take back parts that we have lost to traffic or to nothingness. So this is an excellent opportunity, and we need to have that dialogue, of course, with the people living in the areas that we are actually changing.
So I think that this is a very difficult task. And just to try to emphasize that we have a city that was constructed during the 20th century, which is highly, for example, car-dominated, and we want to change that. I'm just emphasizing this is a difficult task. I'm very sorry to say that you're not doing the best you can. But yeah, let me take a concrete example. I mean, Kristoffer, for example, as I mentioned, we have heard that Helsinki will try to rebuild their highways to boulevards. And so do you think that Stockholm need more highways?
Well, it's actually not for me to decide, because that's well, the municipalities and the central government that decides when it comes to new highways, not the county. But I think we need both, because we will not get rid of the cars, I would say, for a few centuries to come. And then we have to ask ourselves the questions: do we want the situation that we have today, when the cars need to drive through the city to get from the south part of Stockholm to the north part of Stockholm? Or should we try to find solutions where more cars can bypass Stockholm, which the bypass is, of course, all about? So I think we need both, but from my point of view, of course, every Swedish crown I can get my hand upon, I will use for expanding the public transportation system. But
did you hear that? That's a promise.
You want some tips on getting your hands on more money, or because, well?
Ingela,
But I would like to if you've seen what we've done in Stockholm during the last 10 or 15 years, we actually increased the inner city by building in Hagastaden, Norra Djurgårdsstaden, Hammarby Sjöstad, Liljeholmen, Årstadalen, och Västra Kungsholmen. That means that a lot of much more people are able to walk or to take the bike to their work, and that is, of course, and there's much more people living inside the city today than it was 15 or 20 years ago. So actually we've done a lot of things, but it's always been in conflict with the legislation about the miljökvalitetsnormer, the bullernormer, and it's always a problem to build inside the city, to densify the city, and we don't have a legislation, Mr. Minister, that helps us doing this, and therefore we're very happy with this new about the new legislation about just buller. Vad fan heter buller?
Noise.
Noise sounds nice. Okay, bad noise. Okay.
Sound pollution.
Sound pollution. Thank you. And that is a very good thing, and it's given us something to work with if we want to densify the city. So I'm very grateful. Thank you, Mr. Minister.
Do you have anything?
Yes, this is one of the two paths which must be walked on if you want to have dense modern cities, because you have to look upon the legislation, and this is what we are doing. And I think that the old government also did a lot of good things there, and we opened another path, and that is to help the municipalities to deliver what people of the cities wants also. So it is two paths, and these two roads actually leads to a greener environment. One thing which the panel before us mentioned, and I am hearing also that Kristoffer is talking about that we need both. We both need big motorways and public transport. And of course, if you can handle the idea of raising the taxes and having a lot of money extra from I don't know where, then you can have both in 100% cars and 100% public transport. But we know that this is not the case. We need to be very sensitive about how to reach our goals about greener cities. And that's why I'm really welcoming what Kristoffer just said, that the public transport must be the main object of handling the public money. And the other interesting thing is also the gender equality within city planning, which is sometimes we talk about that and theorizing about that, but we never have it on the table when the big decisions are making. Because we know from studies done that girls and women are using public transport much, much more. And this idea, now I can see it in Stockholm, Malmö, Gothenburg, cities which are growing and have this main object on the table when the big decisions are made. And this, I believe, is a very important part of making access to the modern city for everybody, not only those with great portemonnaie, with great money, but also everybody, but also with gender equality on the table.
Roger.
Yes, let me do a little fine-tuning here, because we started like to talk about Stockholm like it was some kind of American city built with urban sprawl and only for the car, and that's not really the whole truth, because part of the city was built with the subway. I mean, in my areas, you built the subways and then you built the houses. So it's we have a very rational infrastructure. And when I grew up, I don't agree on I think Kristoffer said it was only the sick and the poor who went with the subway. Maybe in my area, most people were sick or poor, I don't know. But for me, I mean, when I got my first monthly card for the subway, I was 12. It was the same dimension as when my father was 18 and he's got his first driver's license back in the 40s. It was like the ticket to freedom, because I could go everywhere in the city. I didn't, of course, because I was only 12. But we must understand that we have a city that is rationally planned, that we have also a great opportunity to continue on that plan, to build in areas close to the infrastructure that is actually existent. So we have a better situation than most other cities in the world, because in the late 50s we did a lot of good things. And we can continue on that and make those areas more dense and more city-like.
Can I do a follow-up question? Because I think it's obvious that public transport accessibility and parking, for example, is connected to each other. And we know that one parking space costs 500,000 kronor in a garage. It makes, we know that it makes housing less affordable. And so this comes to the issue of the parking standard, parkeringstalet, parkeringsnormen. Roger, do you think that we need a parking standard? We know that the market doesn't want it, the developers and the property owners don't really like that.
I think we need a very flexible parking standard, not a monumental parking standard for all over the city, but going from project to project, discussing, do we need parking spaces, do we not? And can we do other things so that we don't need to take up parts of the city with parking space? And as you say, the market is in demand for not using up areas to parking space because the ground is so expensive. And that has changed, because when I started in city politics like 20 years ago, that was not the situation. And just like 8-10 years ago, I mean, the old majority, they started by raising the standard for parking to one car for every flat. And that's not the situation. That's not what the market wants, that's not what the people want, and that's not what the city needs.
So if you have the best location, like right on top of a subway, how low can you go, do you think?
We are actually now building houses with zero parking tall.
Okay, that's a number. Kristoffer, can you just explain or dwell on the thing that you have? You know, you have your politics, but then you have your planners, and still they do the work, the daily work, and how to get things done in reality. How do you think you can, if you have this vision of more public transport, more biking, and so on? How can you change your planners to do the right thing? And to
well, to start with, I think to agree with what Roger said, that we we have a good foundation already. As someone said before, 80% of the journeys made in peak hours are made with the public transportation today. More than half of the journeys made in Sweden with public transportation on an ordinary day is made in Stockholm. We have a system that we should be proud of, I would say. 800,000 daily travelers that make 2.8 million journeys every day in the public in the Stockholm public transportation system. So we have a good foundation, I would say, but of course more can be done. What can be done about the planners? Well, I think we have good planners in general when it comes to SL and the public transportation system. But I think, of course, what should be done, I think that we need more cooperation between the municipalities in the Stockholm region, with the county, and also, I would say, the national level, in order to actually use our money in the best ways, but also to actually make this well, connecting the forces in order to make a difference. And as Ingela said before, and as I said before, I think the agreement when it comes to the expansion of the subway system is a very good example. We need more of that, a cooperation between different parts of political Sweden and different parts of the planning structure we have, regional, local, and national. So that is what I would say is one important thing to try to develop.
Yeah. So Ingela, do you have any ideas about the relations between politics and policies and actual planning?
I think that I don't really see the problem that you see, because I think, as Dan said, when you walk in the traffic administration, or if you go to your administration, I mean, the planners are actually trying to make more public transport, more bicycle lanes, more space for the public transportation in buses, and so it's actually the problem is more about time and funding. I mean, where do we get the money to do all these things, and also to have to realize that if you really want to have bicycle lanes, if you really want to make the buses go forward and have more metros, you might not be able to have the most perfect system, because we're not building a new city. We are building within an old city, and that means that we will have to make compromises, that we will have to make adjustments to the fact that there are actually houses standing somewhere, or we have trees, or we have everything. So we will always have to compromise. We will never have the perfect system for bike lanes or for anything, and that is a challenge. And we must have politicians who realize that. We must have planners who realize that, and we also must have money to make all these things. But it's not a problem. We have, I think, very wise politicians now, because they are all my bosses, so I have to say that. But
of course.
I also think it's true. And we have very good planners. And I'm sitting between these two, and I'm very proud of what is being done. And I just think that we will have to be, if we have this panel discussion, 10 years ago, and you would have all these experts who were sitting here before, they wouldn't have said anything of what they were saying now.
Yeah.
So we have a huge change in the mindset of people working with transportation systems. And so I think it's really an exciting moment now, and I think that we all should be very proud, and the fact that you have this conference is a very good thing, because it makes us even more at edge, more, and so it's a good thing. But I also think that you should realize that we are not the enemy. We are on the same side.
Of course, that's why you're here. I think that's a great conclusion of this discussion, and I want to thank you so much for coming. You will still have now the opportunity to vote for the scenarios. So please, anyone from Free City, No comments, just raise your hands.
But I really like the free techno city with the echo twist. That's my idea. So.
Yeah, okay. So the Techno City and the Eco City. Okay, so thank you so much. Now it's time for a coffee break. And as you can all imagine, we are a lot of people, so you have to be back for the talk from Janette Sadik-Khan. And don't forget, if you haven't registered for the workshops, don't forget to do that. And welcome back soon.